One of the questions I often hear from a lot of customers around disruptive new technologies like artificial intelligence is how do they go about incorporating it? What is the appropriate approach to bring it into your enterprise? So there are two very unique approaches that I've seen, and both of them come with their pros and cons. A lot of organizations follow what you would have called a more waterfall style model. I like to call it the Apple model of doing things. And a lot of organizations follow a very iterative type model, which is again something that you see a lot of tech companies do. And what I've particularly found is the answer for most customers is really somewhere in between, right? It is sort of a hybrid of the two. So what I mean by that is when you follow a very waterfall style or a very Apple style approach, you're just not going to ship anything until it is completely perfected, right? And these organizations are going to spend a lot of time. They will traditionally be laggard when it comes to disruptive technologies, or late or later to the market compared to their competitors. But they take the time to let these things completely brew, have really perfected every use case, every scenario, every feature, every function. Now, historically, this is a model that has really not worked. And we see that a lot of organizations have basically moved to a more iterative style model. But again, I think it is very industry specific and also very culture specific. I find that a lot of industries, particularly regulated sector types, it's ingrained in their DNA to really not ship anything until it is very, very close to perfection. Because obviously they have a lot of legal scrutiny and things like that happen in other parts of their business. So it flows down into how you do software delivery. So a good example of this could be healthcare companies, right? They want to be extremely specific about what they're doing. Is it working correctly? Because there is a potential of somebody that because of deficiencies in their core business product and offering. And so that mentality of precision, that mentality of extreme carefulness, even at the cost of everything else, is just inbuilt into that culture, into that industry, into their DNA. A contrast to that is a very sort of B2C company. If you're in advertising, for example, or mass communication or something, you absolutely want perfection. But you do realize at the same time that you also have a need to ship things very, very quickly, right? So there is always this balancing of perfection or fineness of quality versus the ability to ship faster. And I think some of these segments need to do both. Or if they have to pick one, they may pick urgency over, precision and other things like that. Anyway, but the Apple's model works well for certain kind of organizations, certain industries. It also works reasonably well for certain kind of technologies, particularly technologies where it is harder to rebuild things, where the cost of retrial is higher, where the entry barriers are significantly high. The alternate model to this is the very iterative sort of model, which focuses primarily on speed and delivery. So yeah, we're going to ship you a few features. They'll probably work. They are 80%, 60% of where they need to be. But here, it's there. And then you let the customer feedback kind of guide it. When you think about disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence, this is a really important aspect. Because when you draw that horizon of accuracy and you draw another for urgency, what you find is that based on your use cases, there are some things that you could immediately apply AI on. And there are others where it may not make sense at all to do it right now. And it may make sense to try it, test it out, spend another 18 months, 24 months to really refine it to a level where you then deploy it internally. So I've always found this interesting sort of dynamic. And the challenge that I see with most organizations is they tend to fall on either side of this almost incidentally. It's just how we've done things. And so we are either on the more sort of waterfall perfectionist side, and it takes a while, so be it, and that's how we are. Or they're on the other side where they go, hey, we are just like aggressive with new technology. We go deploy. And at some point, it gets in terms of refinement, and it's very informed by rapid iteration, by a lot of user feedback, and it significantly reduces our time to market, right? But both of these choices tend to be products of the environment. But what really can happen in between of this is that if you lay out your set of use cases, there are some use cases that are great candidates for a very iterative style of methodology, right? It may be very, like, take an example with AI, right? What we do at GPTfy, we can write personalized emails using AI right from inside Salesforce. Now, that's something that you can leverage in certain industries where your rep is writing an email, and instead of using a template, they can now write a more contextually sensitive email. So in certain industries, that use case, you may not want to perfect it too much. You're like, okay, great, we'll start with this and then move forward and keep improvising. So that is a great use case where you can apply this. The other aspect of that is you may have use cases like if you're financial services and you want to assess suitability, right? Or if you want other such things where there is a greater degree of scrutiny, there is a greater degree of accuracy that you need, and the AI may or may not give you that. Those are cases that you would push to a latter phase of your implementation. So start with cases that lend themselves well to iterative things, and then you get it earlier in front of your users, you get more market feedback, you get more internalization of technology, and you are able to kind of clear a few of the roadblocks and deploy something leverage from that real world experience. And then there are other cases where you're like, thou shall not touch them, and AI or no AI, we'll get to them, at a second, third, these implementations. So that's kind of how I see this. I'd be very curious to hear what you think. Thank you so much.